The NFL draft is a question mark every single year. But we do know that there will be top picks that live up to the hype, some who don't, and sleepers that prove all the scouts wrong. And we know that almost each draft will produce at least one future Hall of Famer. Some will produce a disproportionate amount. 7 Hall of Famers were selected in the 1983 draft, 9 in the 1967 draft, and the Steelers alone drafted 4 Hall of Famers in 1974. But there's just one exception, 1 year from 1960 until the end of the century that has produced 0 Hall of Famers. That year was 1992, and we're going to find out why that is right after this. It's time to take a deep dive into the 1992 NFL Draft's shortcomings, and there's no better place than to start at pick number 1. The first pick in the draft belonged to the Indianapolis Colts, who had won just a single game in 1991. They needed help just about everywhere on their roster, so they had one task: take the best player available. Fortunately for them, they also own the second overall pick. If they could hit on these 2 selections, their rebuild would be accelerated, maybe even painless. And what they did was miss on both. The first pick was Washington defensive end Steve Emtman. He played just 6 years in his career and tallied just 8 sacks in the process. After him came linebacker Quentin Coriat out of Texas A&M, aka Jadeveon Clowney I. He played 2 years longer than Emtman, and while he surpassed 100 combined tackles in a season 3 times in his career, never made a Pro Bowl and never lived up to the expectations of the number 2. He also came within inches of sealing a surprise Super Bowl bid for the Colts and missed a golden opportunity to do so. So not only were the top 2 picks not Hall of Famers, but it's fair to call them busts or disappointments at the very least. That wasn't the case for the entire first round. Overall, there were 13 Pro Bowlers in the first 32 picks. On paper, that makes the draft look better than average, but upon closer review, 8 of those 13 only made the Pro Bowl once, and no one made the trip more than 4 times. Well, except one player. We'll talk about him later. One of those Pro Bowlers has an even better credit to his name. When Desmond Howard was selected with the 4th overall pick by the Washington Redskins, he had just won the Heisman Trophy for his electrifying kick returns and receiving skills the year before at Michigan. When you look at his numbers as a wide receiver, they're hardly befitting of the number 4 pick. Just 1,500 yards and 7 touchdowns spread out over 11 seasons in the NFL. But it's hard to call him a bust because when he got his hands on a kick, he was as dangerous as anyone. He had 8 punt return touchdowns in his regular season career, but he's best remembered for his 1996 playoff run with the Packers. First, a 71-yard punt return touchdown to help beat the 49ers in the divisional round, and a few weeks later, 244 all-purpose yards and a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown to win Super Bowl MVP in Green Bay's victory over the New England Patriots. A strangely satisfying career, and yet not a Hall of Famer by any measure. He's pretty good on game day though. Neither were Dale Carter or the late Chester McGlockton, who despite going to 4 Pro Bowls each have yet to sniff a gold jacket. We all know a draft goes deeper than its first round, and while 1992 had plenty of blue chippers in rounds 2 through 12, it's hard to upgrade them from the Hall of Very Good to the Hall of Fame. We're talking about players like Mark Chmura, who made 3 Pro Bowls but failed to score a touchdown in all 4 of his non-Pro Bowl seasons. Or with his babysitter, Jeff Blake, who threw 35 more touchdowns than interceptions but lost 22 more games than he won. Or Brad Johnson, who has a Super Bowl title under his belt but mostly now serves as the answer to a trivia question. None of the undrafted players were much of a threat to crack the Hall of Fame either, with the only Pro Bowler being Bears linebacker Jim Schwantz, who now serves as mayor of Palatine, Illinois. Of course, the draft was still 12 rounds in 1992, so the undrafted pool was especially watered down. So we understand the 1992 NFL draft was weak on talent, big names, and accolades, but why was that? Were great football players just not being born in the early 70s? Was another sport robbing the NFL of great athletes? Or was it simply the law of averages? Just a year before, the 1991 NFL draft produced 2 Hall of Famers, Brett Favre and Aeneas Williams, neither of whom were selected in the first round, while fringe Hall of Fame candidate Ricky Watters was taken 45th overall. Then in 1993, Michael Strahan, Willie Roaf, Will Shields, and Jerome Bettis all reached the Hall of Fame, while fellow draftees like John Lynch Lynch, and Lorenzo Neal each have a strong case to get in. So by virtue of a few months of eligibility, the 1992 draft was caught in between 6 Hall of Famers and 3 potential inductees.
Missed it by that much.
There's other what ifs as well. What if Drew Bledsoe, the number 1 pick in the 1993 draft, had somehow declared for the draft in 92? Would the Colts have taken him with one of their first 2 picks and developed him into a long-time starter? One that wasn't usurped by the 199th pick and kept his job long enough to build a Hall of Fame resume? Maybe, but the Colts were not nearly as strong an organization in the 90s as the Patriots, so perhaps Bledsoe's best bet to get into the Hall would have been to go back in time and convince Tom Brady to play baseball for the Expos. I'm assuming once Skynet is active and time travel is possible, that is the first mission on the list. It's important to remember that just because the 1992 draft hasn't produced any Hall of Famers as of 2019, that doesn't close the door permanently. Specifically, there are 2 members of that draft class that still have a good shot to get a gold jacket, starting with the 7th overall pick, cornerback Troy Vincent from Wisconsin. Vincent stayed with his drafted team, the Dolphins, for just 4 seasons before moving on to the Eagles, where he made the Pro Bowl every year from 1999 to 2003, including 2 All-Pro teams. Just as notably, Vincent served as the president of the NFL Players Association for 5 years and is currently VP of Football Operations for the entire NFL, and likely has to suffer with Roger Goodell texting him at 2 in the morning. Throw in a Walter Payton Man of the Year award, a Bart Starr Man of the Year award, 47 career interceptions, 3 touchdowns, and 13 seasons as team captain, and that's a solid portfolio. Vincent has been a nominee for the Hall every year since 2012, but has yet to break into the exclusive group. Perhaps the other player is as surprising, but mostly because he is the only member of the 90s Cowboys dynasty not already in the Hall of Fame. Even though his teammates Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, Larry Allen, and Charles Haley have all gotten in, safety Darren Woodson, the 37th pick in the draft, still waits for the call. His resume: 1,300 tackles, 23 picks, 17 forced fumbles, 11 sacks, 5 Pro Bowls, 4 first-team All-Pros, and those 3 rings. Like Vincent, he's only been a preliminary nominee. And while we're on the Cowboys, let's look at the 36th overall pick, which they also owned. That was receiver Jimmy Smith, who scored 67 touchdowns, recorded 9 1,000-yard seasons, and was a 5-time Pro Bowler. The only problem was none of those things happened while he was with the Cowboys. How does that compare with Dallas's own Hall of Famer Michael Irvin? They're tied in Pro Bowls. Irvin has 1 more All-Pro team and 1 more ring, but Smith has 112 more receptions, 300 more yards, and 2 more touchdowns than Irvin, despite the fact that Smith didn't catch a single pass during his first 2 years with the Cowboys. Irvin made the Hall of Fame easily in 2007, but Smith has never broken the top 25 in his years of eligibility, and he's never stabbed a teammate in the neck with scissors, though he did go to prison. Damn it. Maybe it's just that Jimmy Smith had the bad luck to have all of his success while playing in Jacksonville as opposed to Dallas or Pittsburgh, but that's part of the overarching theme for the 1992 NFL Draft. Bad luck. Maybe if a higher functioning team had held the first 2 picks, they could have drafted and developed someone worthy of the Hall. Or maybe it's just as simple as the law of averages taking its vengeance on the year 1992 for giving us Cardi B. Every draft in the modern era has produced a Hall of Famer. Most had produced multiple, but there was bound to be a year where the well was dry or circumstances just didn't allow for one. Even the worst drafts like 2013 have yielded players like DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Rhodes, Le'Veon Bell, Travis Frederick, and Travis Kelce that could all one day wear gold jackets, but definitely no record deals. Though the 1992 NHL draft was kind of butt, the 1992 NBA draft gave us Hall of Famers like Shaq and Alonzo Mourning, and the concurrent MLB draft humbly offered up soon-to-be Hall of Famer, Mr. Gift Basket himself, Derek Jeter. But for 1 year, the NFL just couldn't keep up, and that's probably the last year it will ever happen. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and of course subscribe for more interesting videos on sports. I'm 5 Points Vids and you made it to the end of this video.